Alright, let's quickly get this over with. First of all, whoops, sorry. Let's close this. That's not important. Anyways, so first shortcut Control N, that is for new scene. Second shortcut Control A for a new node. Let's see, if you want to create a new scene as a child node, Control Shift A is what you want to press. After that, once you have added a node, let's see, this will be easier to show if there is something visible. Let's see, let's just place this here, placeholder texture. I don't know, let's just give it any size. Okay, oops, sorry about that. So Q allows you to move it as well as resize it and whatever, but it can be a bit difficult to manage depending on how accurate your selection is or how inaccurate it is. So press W and you can move it around. If you press shift while pressing W, you can snap it to a particular axis when you are moving it. If you press E, you can rotate it across this pivot point, and that pivot point itself is something that you can manipulate its position using, I believe, yep, this is the icon with which you can rotate the pivot, change the location of the pivot point, and then when you press E, it will rotate around that point. If you press S, it will scale, and if you press shift S, well, if you have pressed shift while using mouse button to drag, you can see that the scaling happens uniformly. If I am not pressing it, it is not particularly uniform, but once I press shift, the scaling becomes uniform across everything. If I press Ctrl S, it tries to save. Here I can press Ctrl N to create a new folder, or I can press F5 to refresh. Not that it will matter in this particular case, but yeah. Apart from that, let's go to, I don't know, scripts, gem, right? So let's see, right? If you want to create an on ready reference for the gem, not gem, for any node, basically if you want to create a reference for this, for any node, you left click on it, you drag to it here without lifting your left click, you press control and then you remove the left click, and it will automatically create the variable along with all the necessary path and types and on ready reference, all that you need to basically create the reference for that variable, although this one is only applicable in GD script. Apart from that, let's see, there is one more, where should it should be in main, I believe. Yeah, okay, this one will serve as a good example. As you can see, this variable new gem has multiple instances. What if I wanted to select some particular instances of it all together for some reason? I select one, I press Ctrl D. Now I have two instances selected. I press another, three instances selected. Press another, four instances selected. And now whatever I type, it automatically gets typed in all four places. If you want to rename a folder, press F2. If you want to rename a scene, press F2. If you want to rename a file, press F2. If you want to rename a script, press F2. All that is pretty simple. If you want to switch between these scene tabs, press Control Tab. If you want to, let's say, if you are working in Visual Studio Code, if you want to rename a particular node across the entire project or a particular variable across the entire project regardless of where it has been used, press F2. Once you rename it here, it will be renamed across the entire project. Alternatively, you can also use the Control D shortcut here as well. It is pretty popular to my knowledge when it comes to various IDEs. If you want to open any particular any particular script in Visual VS Code, Control P, just type the name, and as you can see, it gives us all the necessary stuff. If you want to, well, I think that's about it. All right, one small thing. If you have got a mouse, then you can press the scroll wheel button down and allow yourself to pan like this, or rotate the scroll wheel button and zoom in and out. If you don't have a mouse, you can press G and this icon gets selected. Then if you press left click and move around, you can pan and whatnot. As far as zooming in and out is concerned, you can use these plus and minus buttons to zoom in and out. Also, if you have like a node selected, then what do you say? If you say you have gone somewhere elsewhere in your screen, if you press F, you will recenter on that node. However, if you don't have anything selected, let's see here. So if you don't have anything selected, if you press F, you will recenter on the origin point here, which is basically this point. I think that about covers all the most. Oh right, did I cover this one? F5, F5 to run, F8 to close, F5 to run the project, F8 to close, F6 to run any particular scene that you want, and then control shift and F5, I believe, if you want. Oh, apologies for my language there. F6 is for running the current scene, and control shift and F5 is for running a specific scene. Not that I tend to use the latter mostly. Can't say honestly remember it all that much, but figured I would tell you since it's there. Anyways, is there anything I'm missing? Well, I guess there is this, but it's not one I use often, only only in instances, so I can't say I remember the shortcuts for the snapping tools. It's one thing if it's Blender, but in Godot it is a bit more troublesome to remember some things. Anyway, so well, I guess I will tell you this once you turned on snap, as you can see, if you look at the values that will appear down here, they are not going into decimal. Rather, you could say that what do you call it? They are going transferring only in whole numbers. They are snapping to various whole number points, and by pressing shift alongside it, I am able to ensure that this snapping happens across a particular axis only. You can make it easier for yourself to see by configuring yourself to see the grid snap, and you can make this snap size change by configure snapping and change the grid step value to something that makes sense to you, as you can see. So it is now snapping only to these values while I have the control button pressed and I am clicking and dragging it around with the left mouse button. That is pretty much it for all the most useful shortcuts. That's about it. Thank you for watching.